Hey, so first off, I want to recap what happened yesterday when I did an hour and a half's worth of streaming, only to discover that either a bug in Twitch or OBS or my internet connection or something meant that none of it actually broadcast, and I hadn't got the recording running either, so I lost all of that, which was annoying. So a quick recap of what I did yesterday, talking to thin air, was adding the tagging feature to the toggles, which is almost as straightforward as, well, in fact it is as straightforward as the toggle switched on and off changes that we did the other day, with the exception of the toggles actually now have, or the events actually have, the name of the tags being added and removed. So we can see here we just take it in as a constructor parameter and store it as a read-only public property. And obviously a bunch of tests to make sure that everything works as possible as we want. After that, made the tags case insensitive. This was achieved by using the hash sets overload, which allows you to specify a string comparer. It's worth noting we're using a hash set for our tags as we don't care about the order of them, but we do want to be able to query whether they're there or not. So the hash set is effectively the key part of a dictionary without the associated value. So by making it case insensitive, we're then able to add a couple of tests which proved that when we can add a tag called testing in lowercase and we add it again in uppercase, we only have one tag in place. And the same goes for removing as well. Then I realized that the tagging should actually validate that the events raised actually contain the names of the tags. So a single helper method was added up here, which just gets a single event and casts it to whatever type we're specifying. So in this case we're saying there should be a single tag added event and its name property should be first tag. And that's been done for all of the tests. We then moved on to implementing projections, which are a way of seeing the data in our system without having to load the aggregates completely. The downside to event sourcing is that you can only really load an aggregate by its identifier. If you want some kind of UI that displays all of the aggregates in a system, you can't do that directly. You need to make a projection which will process the events and build some kind of view, which is what we did here. So this is what a projection looks like. In our case, it's just a plain class. We have a list of a dictionary, which is our toggles. So this is just going to be a list of IDs and names of all the toggles in the system. We, in a very similar manner, have this register for the event consumption. This is very similar to how aggregate root works. The difference is that the consume method, rather than an apply method, will only try and run an event handler. So if one doesn't exist, it just won't do anything, as opposed to throwing an exception. And in our case, we just have a single event handler, which takes the name and writes it into the identifier key. And then we just have some tests here to prove that when given a single toggle created event, we end up with a single toggle in the list. When given 3 of them, we end up with 3 of them in the list. And if we pass it an event we don't care about, nothing bad happens. I then refactored events to have a base class. So I removed the timestamped interface and replaced it with this event base class. This has an aggregate ID and a timestamp. All of the events were changed to inherit from this, as you can see. And finally, the aggregate root was updated to make all of the generic parameters require each event to actually inherit from event. And we re-implemented the timestamp logic, except we don't need to do any kind of casting now because we're guaranteed to have a timestamp property. and tests were updated, just so that we had the event type being passed around, and we actually our test events inherit it as well. This was done so that we could make our events automatically have the ID of the aggregate that they've been applied to written to them. All this means is we've had to move the ID property for our aggregate to the base class of aggregate root rather than having it sat in the toggle. And after the handler has been run, when we call apply event, we write in the ID. This has to happen after the handler runs, because if we were to create a new aggregate and then run the first event, which has the ID of the new aggregate in it, that won't have been assigned until after the handler runs. So while timestamp is something that can happen beforehand, aggregate ID, or parent ID if you'd rather, can't happen until the aggregate's actually been assigned its ID, sorry. And then again, we wrote some tests here to prove that when we create an aggregate with a new ID, the subsequent events all should have that ID assigned into them. What did we do here? Yes, and now that we have the IDs being populated, we just updated our toggle test to prove that when an event for an aggregate we already have read comes along that we don't care about, that is ignored, as opposed to a generic event. And finally, projections had a base class extracted. Again, very similar to the aggregate root base class, with the difference of we have this consume method rather than apply event. So yeah, that was a quick whistle-stop tour of what we did yesterday. Obviously took a lot longer yesterday. Right, so question is, what's the next thing to do? Yes, so I also added in this. I've also started using the presentation mode in Rider to display things, because it's a bit easier for people's screen sizes watching the stream. The downside is if you hit Control W to shut a tab in presentation mode, the whole thing hangs for a few seconds or a minute for no apparent reason. So that's fun. And sometimes IntelliType doesn't appear up. I've also switched font. This is an open source font called Iosevka, maybe? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Yeah, it's an open source programmer's font. I quite like it, and it does this as well. So it takes a space and an arrow and turns them into a single character when they're next to each other. Right. So the first thing I want to do is move this into the infrastructure namespace where it should be. And we'll just commit that. What happened there? Okay. Base class to the interfaces. Infrastructure namespace. Right. Now that we have a single projection, can either, let's go and check our feature list. So we've got this logging feature here, which really is just a projection of events happening, except for this one, which is queried. We could implement this as another projection, so whenever anything happens, we will just write a log. So yeah, let's have a go at doing that. Or, we've mentioned a few times that I want to put some kind of security in this. So that would imply that we have a user ID for when things happen of some form. So I think actually what we shall do is enforce that all of our events have a user ID. Now, where we have our base class here that can have things applied by the aggregate, we can do it there. So we'll do a public string user ID. We'll use a string rather than anything else because we don't know what the user ID will be. It'll probably be a GUID, but it might not be. Could be an integer. So we can just store it as a string at least. Now, if we go to our aggregate root, we have these two methods here. I think it would be good to put the user ID in as soon as we can. Although, if we put the user ID in beforehand, then run the handler, there's nothing to stop the handler having a clear out the user ID type functionality to it as a side effect. But you know, as we're writing this, we wouldn't ever do this to ourselves. But it would now make sense to say event dot user ID equals something. And we might not want a user ID for everything, like other aggregates. So what we can do is, let's have a protected method, void apply event. No, I don't want to call it apply. It needs synonyms for apply. Populate extra event data. Yeah, it'll do. And this is going to be an event e at event, and it's not going to do anything. It is going to be virtual though. And at this point we shall run it here, I think. Now I could move that inside the method, and then I rely on people actually calling the base method as well. Yeah, that's slightly cleaner, we'll do that. Right. So, as we've now refactored some of the aggregate roots behavior, hopefully we haven't broken any tests. Beginning to think I need a new laptop. This is not entirely happy about doing compilation while I'm streaming. Oh, well, that's a good excuse for I need to get a new one. Right, so we've not broken any existing tests, but we should probably add some more to prove that we can do things with that. So we have our test aggregate here. So let's do user ID population. So we'll do override, or shall we? We should have a separate aggregate for testing this. Yeah, why not? Private class cross-cutting aggregate, which is an aggregate root, and we're going to need yeah, let's register for, nope, can't do that, register, we'll do test event 1, scene events.add, and we'll do the same thing for, yeah, stamped, which obviously means we need one of these and one of these. Right, And now we'll actually override the method, so we'll have override. Not sure what that is. I'm still not sure the name of that's right. Ah well. And what shall we do here? I want this to do something, so let's do a func string extra. Initialize field from parameter, and all we'll do is do extra at event dot user ID equals extra. Right. So now if we do fact when when filling, let's use the actual word populating extra event data var aggregate equals new cross-cutting aggregate, and for here we need to do something, not sure what yet, and then we will do yeah, that'll do. So we'll do var user ID equals GUID.newGUID, toString, and we'll just return that here. We'll raise an event. Oh, we need the raise method as well. As you can see, copy and paste is still alive as a design pattern. New test event 1. What am I programming? I am writing a feature toggling service for fun. If you go onto my GitHub, there is the README for it here, which isn't that explanatory, but has got all of the coding that I'm doing, and my rough to-do list as well. And we shall now just prove that the event actually had the data written to it, so we need an actual reference. No, we can do this. Aggregate dot scene events last single. This should only ever be one. User ID should be, my typing really. User ID. And that'll prove that works. Yeah, that should work. Hooray. So we now have the ability to support cross-cutting concerns in the aggregate. Let's just check what we're about to commit. Yep, that'll do. Support custom cross-cutting concerns. Custom cross-cutting concerns. It's a nice bit of alliteration. Right. So now that we actually can do that, we want to have a look at our toggle aggregate, and we need to override our method, which where makes most sense. I guess here we'll do protected override that, call the base method, and also do something. So event, let's do it beforehand. Now, we somehow need to know what the user ID is. Where am I going to get that information from? I don't know if this actually still exists in .NET Core. Let's have a look. System dot security dot current. No, print. Oh, I can't even remember what the namespace is. Let's just try and tell it how prints it. Does that namespace still exist? Thread. Let's reference it for a second. I know what I'm after is on this at least. Current thread. Yeah, no, it's not there anymore. Right, let's see. Let's undo that referencing of that assembly, because I don't want it anymore. Right, so as that's not available, what I imagine would be the easiest way to do is to say get current user ID. Oh, bugger. There we go. And up here, do that, and that, and this is a func of string, and we'll actually need a field for this. Read-only field. Right. Now we have the interesting problem that we need to pass in other information into our constructors. Like that. And that. The other alternative is to force the user ID to be here. Like that. And then write it into the event ourselves each time. So you'd have user ID equals. Now you wouldn't necessarily assign it on every event. I prefer the injected version just because it means every event is guaranteed to have it. So, although it makes creation of the object slightly harder. Oh well, we shall muddle through it. Lots of test errors. Now this is one of the other things that I mentioned yesterday while talking to no one, that I need to refactor those tests because there's a lot of common stuff between them. As we don't care what the get current user ID is, we're just going to do this. Yeah, and I think for legibility's sake we shall put these on separate lines as well. Especially this one. Right, how many others are these? Create new. How do you structure that so that it reads nicely? I think we can do this. Statement lambda. Yeah, that'll do. Now on this one we can actually leave like so. Now, none of these tests care about user IDs, so what we can do is that that. And yeah, that one as well. Right, let's check I've not actually broken anything. Why does that say 33 and that say 31? Run everything. Oh, I bet it's a theory. Maybe. Inconclusive tests. Why are you inconclusive? I wish I knew what that meant when it said that they were inconclusive. Resharper, one-on-one methods and test cases are missing for the selected tests, but did the discovery succeed? What? Let's just shut the session then and try running all of them again. Nope, still inconclusive. If in doubt, close the solution and reopen it. Much like you used to do in Visual Studio all the time. Wow, presentation mode on the launch screen as well. That's better. Right, build. Just run this file. What the hell? Oh, okay. Weird. And now I've gone up to 38 tests. Great. I love it when stuff like this works. Right. Yeah, so right, toggle add little parameter for getting current user ID. Right. Now, oh, I hit Control W. Oh, it didn't crash for too long today. Now, all of these tests have a very similar structure. And as we add more features, we're going to end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. So what I want to do is try and make a base class that takes most of this setup away for us. So public class toggle test. Yeah, I'm not going to call it based because that annoys me. We will move the toggle and the create toggle and the events to here and inherit toggle test. For the time being, we'll make that protected. Likewise that. No, protected. And we shall also grab the other helper, which is that one. Which actually does something slightly different in this class. So if we do that, yeah, let's move that into a separate class. Separate file, sorry, it's already a separate class. What's your problem? Rename to toggle. Yes, and we're also going to encapsulate it. And make it private settable, and make that protected. And let's make this abstract as well, so that we don't accidentally add tests to the base class. What is your problem? It's never used. Well, not yet, it will be. And I hit Control W again. Right, we'll come back to this test in a minute. Right. So our switching tests are now just tests, rather than setup code as well. And our tagging tests, if we delete that, and inherit our new base class, toggle test, and replace that with that. Let's do dot. Replace it with dot. Now I can do replace all. Right, build everything, run everything. Oh, hopefully we'll run all the tests this time. Good. Right, now let's come back to this toggle created tests. These are toggle test. Now we have a base method called create toggle. It's got a different name though. Do we care? We do for this. Well, that one can be done at least. So let's grab this. And we'll do this. Create toggle. Toggle should satisfy all these conditions, which is this, this, and this, except the name is now what the base class has. That should still work. Right. Right, what about this one? Now this time we have descriptions and such. None of these are checking that the event is written out as well, which they probably should be. I think we'll have a create protected void custom create create custom toggle. This is just going to take in a param of events, and unlike the other one, Yeah, we can do this. Do that. Ish. Do that. Events. Create custom toggle. Yes, so create toggle does the normal thing for the other tests, and custom toggle just doesn't provide this initial event. So for this one we can do create custom toggle, new toggle created. This doesn't work, does it? Simplifies a few things, but not everything. You know what will make it much easier is to undo everything I've just done in here. Remove that, and just have this. So undo the changes in here as well. Accept that. And we'll just that. The basic idea is I want access to all of the helper methods that are going to be placed in here. I don't specifically care that this isn't using the same method of creation. Let's do this, do that, case sensitive. And yeah, let's use a dot again. Right. Yep. So, shouldn't have broken any tests at least. And then we can come back and expand these tests, because we're not actually checking whether the event raised, or whether there is an event raised for a start, and what it contains, which is kind of important with this. Did I have any of these left? So created, switching, tagging, our base class, and this. Well, let's rename this. Toggle loading tests. And as before, we'll just replace that with that. And toggle test. Do that. And run everything again. What if it would ever finish compiling? Excellent. And no dodgy whitespace for a change either. Toggle tests, refactor for base class of helpers. Right. Oh, I hit Control W again. Now these tests, like I said, are not validating that the event comes through, and they really should be. So what we can say is single event, which is a toggle created. Do that. Created dot. It's basically the same as this. Set, we can do this. That did not do what I was expecting. I really miss Atom's ability to do multi-highlighting and multi-line editing at once when I'm in another editor. I got used to doing it in Sublime, and then I switched to Atom and was happy that that could still do it. No other editors seem to bother with it. Right, we've also got some additional properties. The aggregate ID should be, now we're creating a new one, so we can just say it should be our goal ID. We just want to point out that these should be identical. No, don't do that. So the ID and the aggregate ID should be the same. There should be a name, there should be a description. I don't think there are any other properties, are there? Oh, created timestamp. Yeah, not really our concern, and we're blanking out the user ID anyway, so we're not going to bother testing that. Let's do this, put this in all of them. And get rid of all this horrible white space that keeps getting added by Rider. That's throwing an exception, so events should be empty. Just checking the white space. So we can say event.single event. Nope. Single event. Toggle created. Name should be name.trim. Right. Hopefully I've not broken anything. Ooh, we have broken something. That's interesting. So, what line blew up? Ah, it's because I copied the wrong data. That should be in there. That should fix that one. Or not. Oh no, it is running, it's just taking its time. Right. Null reference exception. That's not allowed. It's not got an event. Ah, well, yeah, it wouldn't. I have to actually assign that somewhere. So do that, and then we can say toggle.name. What was that one's problem? Well, yeah. I can't compare the events because it throws an exception, so we don't even have an object. Hooray. Right. That's better. Oh, no new line at the end of the file. Tut tut. Solves that one. Right, toggle created tests. Check events have correct data. Data, not date. Right, now that we've rectified that, let's go back onto matters more interesting. Let's have a look at our feature list. Right, so I'm thinking logging next, because we've covered having the user ID attached to each message or each event. So I think a projection that just logs everything that happened. So let's go into here. You can see projections are nice and simple, so we can just do new class. This is going to be our logging projection. It would be if I could type. And this is going to inherit projection. And we have a constructor, and we need to register for things. Now, I don't want to have to specify every event every time for this. You mean the font size, Wolfie? Yeah, it is it's taken a bit of getting used to. As long as I don't hit Control W too often, things don't crash too much. Yes, the logging machine. I don't want to have to specify every single event each time. So whenever we add new things like, I don't know, environment changed or that kind of thing, I don't want to have to remember to come in here and add it. So first thing to do is to refactor projection slightly. What we're going to do is add a protected void called register all. This will take an action of event, which is the handler for everything. And I can't foresee needing multiple of these, so I'm just going to call it the catch-all equals handler. Private, although we could make it read-only, just have a list of them. And we could iterate them. That would make things a bit more pleasant to read, so I'll do that instead. So, portrait mode on a phone, unable to read. Yeah, that's not bad. Wouldn't recommend trying to develop on a phone though. New list of action object. Do that. Catch all. Add handler. No, it's not an object, is it? It's an event. Oh. And here we can now just say catch-all.forEach. Oh, there is a for each on it now. An action of yeah, apply at event. That signature makes sense. Handle. Could actually make that now do that as well. Oh, and then you have, let's not do that for now. We'll do that later. And as we've made infrastructure changes, let's expand our tests for it. So we have our test aggregate. No, that's the aggregate route. I want to test the projections. I don't have a specific... Oh, yeah, Control W again. Come on. Be useful. No, don't know. Right then. Projection tests. Oh, but it instantly opens the file. Okay, that's weird. Right. So we're going to need a private class, a private... this can be our catch-all projection, so class catch-all projection, and this inherits projection. Okay. And we're going to have a list of things which will be our scene events. Common pattern, this might have to make a standard class. The scene, the app sign, it's because event is a protected keyword. So if we go into our projection, so if I remove that, you'll see it goes blue and the usage of type expected. So that's how you define event handlers in C#. But because I want to use the keyword, I have to stick an @ sign in front of it. Scene events equals new, where that came from, new list of event. It's case sensitive though, so luckily I don't have to prefix classes with it. Do that. That needs to go up there. Right, so we're going to register for everything, and when an event happens, we're just going to scene events.add it. Oh, register all. There we go. Yeah, in my last company we had some VB.NET applications, and for the NUnit horrible assert syntax that has the where you do something along the lines of assert that blah is, don't do that, equal to something else. That doesn't work in VB.NET because is a keyword in VB.NET, so you either had to do that, or for a while NUnit provided that as as an alias, which yeah, that hurt my Englishness. That did, having is spattered everywhere. Right, so let's have a test fact. When an event is consumed, let's have some events. Public class first event. I can spell. No, I can't. Public class second event. Right, so we create a projection. New catch all projection. Consume new first event. New second event. And we can just say I want to affirm that these were actually stored, so RV first, RV second. There is a plugin for OBS which will put what you're typing onto screen as well, like the key presses. I've been wondering if that would be a good idea for this, because then you might see all of the random resharper keyboard shortcuts that I hit all the time, and all of the other random crap that I accidentally hit as I'm going. So scene events should be first, second, and there's no type that covers both of them, so we just do event. Well, there is a type that covers both of them, it just can't, compiler can't infer it. Awesome. Great, good, that's enough for that. Because our single event projection, well, here we might as well add tests for it. Test projection inherits projection, or a proper subset exception, whatever that might be. Projection. So we'll do that, and public cdoor scene events equals a new list, second time's a charm. Register. This time I'm only going to register one of the events, and scene events. Add. Let's register 2, and we'll define a third event as well. Public class third event. Right. So when, let's name this better, when consuming all events and then we'll have another version which is fact, when consuming specific events. And as we're registering for first, second, we're going to also send third as well. Projection.consume new third event. And this is not the catch-all projection, this is a test projection. So it does the same thing, except first and second are registered manually rather than using the register all. Right. Oh, white space. That did something else. Oh, okay. And actually, we don't want to commit the new projection yet, because that's not relevant for what this commit contains. There, yeah. Projection. Support registering for all events. Now when I've implemented this before, rather than doing just a register all, I implemented inheritance support, so it would try and get the handler directly for the event type, but then it would also look in the handler dictionary for anything that could be assigned to it. So you could then say, you could do register object, and then you'd get everything that was ever sent into the consume method. But as I don't need it yet, I'm not going to implement it yet. Right. let's go back to our logging projection. Now, our logging projection, there's two parts to this. The first one is how we're going to display the data, which I think can be a list of log entries, say. So let's do public class log entry. That needs a date time of when the entry occurred and a message. I think that's data now. So what we're going to do is say messages equals new list of log entry. Maybe log message is a better name considering the property is called messages. And we can now just register for everything. Register all at event messages.add new. New log entry with a timestamp of event timestamp and a message of at event.toString. Now, this to start with is going to have some fairly horrible messages because it's just going to have the string names of all the projections in it. So our first, do we want to test like that? Yeah. So let's add some tests for our projection. Logging projection tests. We can just do projection equals new logging projection. And as we're registered for everything, we can have our own test methods or test events. So we can have public class first. I'm good at naming things. Oh yeah, we need to inherit event. And public class second, which also inherits event. And then we just say when consuming events, projection.consume new first, projection.consume. Oh, we need to specify timestamps on these as well. So what we'll do is we'll say var now equals datetime.now, and then we can say the first one happened now, dot add seconds 1, new second, and this one timestamp is now add seconds 2. And projection dot messages should be now. The downside is because I've used a custom class, I can't just say that it should be new log message or log entry because it's not comparable. It'll be a different instance. So I've got the option I can either make log entry iEquatable. I think that's the right interface. Or I just run the assertion twice with a lambda with a projection on it. So select e dot message. So now we have an array of strings, so we can say let's want to prove that two strings called. Yeah, so we'll just do this. We'll extract these into variables. So we also need to check the timestamp in a minute as well. So right, projection message should be first.toString, second.toString, then messages select. This time we'll select the timestamps. Should be now.add seconds 1, now.add seconds 2. Yeah, close enough. Excellent. The only thing I'm not happy about is I don't like that it's two separate assertions. Is there an overload that can do it for me? Right. Oh wow, so it doesn't expand all of the text. I can barely read that. Custom message, custom message. No, there's nothing to give it a custom comparer. I mean, I could. Yeah. Oh, we'll just stick with this for now. We've only got 2 messages anyway. Right. Let's see. Add logging projection. Now, we're not going to get very nice log messages out of this because at the moment all of our events are just going to print out their default 2 strings. So, what I'm thinking is to add a test for everything. So we need tests that run across all our events that make sure that toString has been overridden. Yeah. So this will be an interesting test to write. So we'll do directory events. We'll call this class event tests. So first thing is we need a list of all events. So public static IEnumerable of object array. This is the format that a theory, an XUnit theory has to obey if you want to fetch custom data. So all events, and this is going to do type of event, not assembly. Ooh, can you not get the assembly anymore? That would be annoying. Well, you used to be able to get the containing assembly at least. Alright, need to do some googling. .NET Core get types assembly. How to get assembly from a type object. That's basically what I'm after. I don't want to load all of them. Get type info. Ah. Get type in. Ah, I can't type. Haha. Oh, there we are. There's the assembly. Right. So, I'll say get exported types where T is, oh, I hate these, is assignable from, because it's not, it's the other way round. It's if type of event is assignable from this type. So that's everything that inherits events, I think. I really wish they had a method that was like inherits or something. Select the new object array containing just the type. Right, we can now do a fact. All events override to string. Except rather than that, we'll do a theory. And then it's member data, I think. Name of, if I do that, all events. Wow, thank you for, okay. Normally it tells you off and wants you to do that. Which is, you know, obviously better, less hard-coded strings everywhere. Oh well. Right, and now we get a type, event type. Now what we want to do is check if that event type implements toString itself. So we want to say get method binding. I need a name. Oh, name of event up to string. Right, now we need to custom binding flags. So we say instance or public or defined only. Okay, binding. Oh, is it declared only? Declared. Yes, declared only. Var method equals. Let's just extract that into a variable. Var. We'll just say overridden. I think that's the only thing that we want to put on that. Yeah, that'll do. Method should not be null. And we want to put a custom message on this as well, because otherwise this is going to make no sense on the test runs. So we'll say event type dot name does not, well, should override toString, but does not. And if we're lucky, this will even work. What have I got red down there for? Well, they found all the events at least, and they all failed because none of them implement. Yep. So let's go for toggle created, and now we can just say override toString return. Now we need a nice message here, which will be like creating toggle let's make it for beta. What's it? Interpolated. Creating toggle name. No, let's put the ID there. Let's say ID. Creating toggle ID called name with description. Let's put quotes around that because you could put anything in description. Yep. With description that. Right, and so now if we were to rerun this test, we should have one succeeding. Hooray! Oh, so it does work. Excellent. So now I just need to go through and implement toString in all of these, but first I'm going to move types into matching files. And for some reason this doesn't tick all of these boxes by default anymore, which is really annoying. So tag added, override toString. Now this is where things get interesting, because I want to put decent messages in here, but what I want to say in here is added tag name. Now I'd want to put the feature toggle's name in there, but I can't because I don't have the feature toggle. So instead we have the aggregate ID to toggle. So we'll just have to make do with having the aggregate ID there instead. Yes, that's entirely valid. Removed tag from toggle. Well, good. We've done created, switched off. Override. True. Turned off. Let's just do that. Copy the whole thing so I don't have to type. It's amazing to think how lazy programmers are. We don't really want to type anything given a choice. Right. Ooh. What event? Right. That's an interesting side case. So thankfully, event is abstract. So what we can just say is we can where t He is abstract. You used to be able to say if it was abstract. Maybe it's on this type info thing. It is. Yeah, so if it's not an abstract class, there's no point or if it is abstract, there's no point overriding its toString, because, yeah, you can't ever call that anyway, because something else will inherit it, and then that'll be covered by another test. Excellent, there we are. Right, CM events for force implementation of toString. What's that one's problem? This weird. Right, I just want to see what these red lines are yapping about. Oh, it's just Rider confusing itself, which it does seem to like to do on a regular basis. Right, that's pretty much all I had planned for this evening. Yeah, I think tomorrow we might actually start on making the API for this. I haven't decided whether I'm going to use directly ASP.NET Core or if I'm going to have an experiment around with Jasper. If you've not looked into Jasper, SpurFX. This is a project by Jeremy Miller, which is modern tooling for server-side stuff. There's a lot of things to do with message passing and microservice type development with it. We're using Martin at work for a couple of projects. We're using it as the event store side of things. Potentially I might use it for this project as well. I'm not sure yet. From what I've been looking at, I might not need everything that it can do, but I might use it as the document side of things for our projections. Jasper is not up yet. Yeah, Jasper can do some stuff with hosting of MVC style websites. Generally, Jeremy's frameworks and things seem to involve less configuration and more convention, which I prefer, and they seem to be more extensible than ASP MVC in itself. But I haven't made any hard decisions yet, so we'll see. Maybe I'll use this, maybe not. Or maybe I'll do both and just see which I prefer. Anyway, that's all I had time for today, so thank you very much for watching. The code is available on GitHub as always, so if you want to take a look at it or implement something or send me a pull request or just generally laugh at what I've been writing, you're more than welcome to. And if you've got any questions, send me them on Twitter, or I think my email's listed on GitHub as well. Yeah, thanks everyone.